have tuning into the show. But I want to get into the takeaways because it is time now to get into our takeaways from Saturday. Michigan defeats Ohio State 30-24. Man, and you watch college football and you see Georgia and the close game they played and some of what's been happening around college. I think that was undoubtedly one of the more impressive wins of what Michigan did. They played, and if you think about it and you watch the game, Ohio State never led the game.
Nope.
They were always trying to catch up. It started from the very beginning and it happened all the way down to the end. And there was a lot of different storylines to get into. I want to get into that stuff at 8:30, more so the JJ stuff, because I want to revisit me and our discussion about JJ, and because, again, he made some incredible throws on Saturday, and I'm curious where that trends and how he plays in the playoffs. Another thing, Michigan, the national championship, what the seeding's going to look like, because there's a lot of different because there's a lot of different scenarios we'll get into, Sam. For example, how the seeding's going to work, especially with Washington and now Oregon winning whoever wins the Pac-12 there, and then you have Georgia and Alabama who wins the SEC. You have Texas with one loss. There's a lot of different storylines there, but we'll start with the takeaway. Sam, what are your initial takeaways from Saturday? What stood out to you?
All right, so I'm going to be a little long-winded with this one because it was such a good game, and there were so many differences in the game in which Michigan succeeded and Ohio State failed. I think there were 6 things that I can take away, 6 things that Michigan did, Ohio State didn't, and not only Michigan, these are the type of things that championship teams do to win games and championships. Number 1, Sharon Moore outcoached Ryan Day. It seemed like Sharon Moore was aggressive. He pulled all of the right strings, and Ryan Day coached scared at times. I'm not saying Ryan Day was terrible or anything like that, but Sharon Moore was aggressive. He seemed to coach with more confidence, and Ryan Day, Michigan is obviously in his head, and Ryan Day had a couple of moments, like an early 4th and 1 at, I think, the Michigan 45 where they punted, and right before the half, they kind of settled for a long field goal. Those are the type of moments in the game where you're like, Ryan Day's puckering a little bit, and Sharon Moore rose to the occasion. Number 2, and this is something that has been a staple of Michigan football the last 3 years, and it did not disappoint again this season. Michigan's run game. You go back to 2021. In 2021, and I'm giving you these to sort of show a trend. In 2021, Michigan outgained Ohio State 297-64 on the ground. That's absolutely spectacular, led by Hassan Haskins' 169 yards and 5 touchdowns. In 2022, Michigan outgained Ohio State 252-143 on the ground, led by Donovan Edwards' 216 yards and 2 touchdowns, including rushing touchdowns of 75 and 85 yards respectively to seal the game. Absolutely incredible. And in 2023, Michigan's run game, although not as dominant as the years prior, still outgained Ohio State, this time 156-107, led by one of the most legendary players in the history of Michigan football, whose legend can be further enhanced in the college football playoff, none other than Blake the Great Corum, with 88 yards and 2 touchdowns, including a 22-yard rushing touchdown with the score tied at 17 after Michigan had just lost their best offensive lineman, Zach Zinner, due to injury. It was very symbolic, and it was just amazing that they were able to, the very next play, get a 22-yard run, the longest run of the day. And once Blake Corum hit the end zone, he threw up the 6-5 to honor Zach Zinner. Just an incredible moment, and an incredible moment by one of the all-time legendary Michigan Wolverines. Yes, I'm calling him that already. So the Michigan's run game, which is often the difference in these games, outgained Ohio State again, and they proved again that they are tougher up front, which they have always been for the last 3 years. My third takeaway. Michigan was 3 of 3 on 4th down attempts, and Ohio State did not attempt one. And all 3 of those 4th down conversions occurred either to give Michigan a touchdown or on a touchdown drive. The first 4th down conversion was the first touchdown of the game, a 4th and goal run by Blake Corum. The next 2 were on the touchdown drive that put Michigan ahead 14-3. One of them was a Blake Corum 4th and 1 run, and the next one was a J.J. McCarthy to Colston Loveland off of a play action short pass. So when Michigan decided to be aggressive, they always converted, and every single one of those conversions was huge, and it led to touchdowns for Michigan. Those are the type of risks that if they pay off, Michigan wins. If they don't, they probably lose. And they called the perfect plays at the perfect time, and they executed, and it was a thing of beauty. Number 4, and this might be the biggest reason of them all, Kyle McCord threw 2 interceptions, J.J. McCarthy threw 0. Kyle McCord, His first interception was absolutely terrible and costly. It was when the score was tied at 0. It was deep in his own territory. He threw a pass intended for Marvin Harrison Jr. That was intercepted by the best cornerback in the country, Will Johnson, which set up a 7-yard touchdown drive, which is obviously very, very easy and advantageous for the offense. That put Michigan ahead 7-0, completely flipped the game in favor of Michigan and in the deficit of Ohio State, to where Ohio State was playing from behind the whole game, and Michigan pretty much controlled the game, and they pretty much controlled it from there on out, led quarter to quarter. And then Kyle McCord, his second interception was when Ohio State actually had a chance to steal victory out of the jaws of defeat from Michigan. They were at the Michigan 37-yard line. They just completed a pass and a fumble to Julian Fleming, which was called a fumble recovered by Emeka Ibuka, and they looked like to be humming, but when Jalen Harrell put a little bit of pressure on Kyle McCord, he threw it up for grabs into the waiting arms of Rod Moore, and here's the thing. You talked about it earlier. We're going to talk about J.J. McCarthy a little bit more. J.J. McCarthy, it's not like he threw for a ton of yards, but he made a lot of big plays, including a huge touchdown pass to Roman Wilson and a lot of huge first down conversions, and he never really put the ball up for grabs, and he played good, clean football, which is what he has done his entire career against Ohio State. So kudos to J.J. McCarthy, and sometimes you got to force a less than quarterback like Kyle McCord into some big interceptions, and Kyle McCord, of course, delivered as we all thought that he would. And this is my fifth takeaway, and this one is some that might go unnoticed. Michigan's James Turner was 3 for 3 on field goal attempts, and Ohio State was 1 of 2.
Dude, that kick right before halftime pissed me off. So, because I knew the second that he did it, like when he actually kicked it, it needed to, and it went right down the middle. I was like, he's missing it.
Absolutely.
Why the fuck? Like, ask Jeff. I was like, why the fuck did he just do that?
I know. And that's the thing. Michigan was 3 of 3. There were some questions coming into the year about James Turner and how they were going to replace Jake Moody, but in the biggest game of his season, he goes 3 for 3 on field goal attempts, and all of them were absolutely crucial. The first one was a 50-yarder to put Michigan ahead 17-10 when they were previously ahead 14-10. The second one was the field goal to put Michigan ahead 27-17, 2 scores, and the third one was to put Michigan ahead 30-24 with 1:05 left, which means that Ohio State had to go score a touchdown, and they couldn't tie it with a field goal. That was absolutely huge. And as you mentioned before, Lucas, the field goal that Ohio State missed would have cut the Michigan lead at halftime to 1.
The game would have been so much different.
It would have been different, but instead it was a 4-point game going into halftime, with Michigan getting the ball back to start the third quarter, which they then went down the field and kicked a field goal for themselves. So it was a bit of a 6-point swing, and those are the type of things that flipped the game. So the kicking game, as much as field goal kicking sometimes is minimized, it was absolutely huge in the favor of Michigan. And number 6, and this was a huge one as well, Michigan won the time of possession battle 33-28 to 26-32, highlighted by one of the most impressive clock-killing drives I have ever seen in my entire life. After Ohio State had just cut the Michigan lead to 27-24 with 8:05 left on a Kyle McCord to Marvin Harrison Jr. touchdown pass, Michigan got the ball and proceeded to go on a 13-play, 56-yard field goal drive that took 7 minutes off the clock, forced Ohio State to use all of their timeouts, and I'm pretty sure that Michigan, they didn't throw any incomplete passes. Every single time, it just kept the clock moving. And one thing that was impressive, and this was a very, very good game management moment by the team and J.J. McCarthy, and I sometimes minimize game management, but this is where it's big. He never snapped the ball with more than 5 seconds left on the play clock. Every single time that Michigan would get another first down, another one, a Blake Corum run, a Donovan Edwards run, a J.J. McCarthy throw to Cornelius Johnson, it was just tick, 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 tick. I know for a fact that when Ohio State scored that touchdown to make it 27-24 with a little over 8 minutes left, they did not think that the next time they would get the ball was with a little over a minute left and no timeouts. That was one of the most impressive 4-minute drives I've ever seen in my entire life, and it just basically killed the whole rest of the clock. And at that moment, You force a guy like Kyle McCord on the road with the defense that can pin their ears back to go win the game with just over a minute left and no timeouts. What did you think was going to happen? Of course he was going to make a game-ending mistake when he was pressured by Jalen Harrell. And those, to me, are the differences in the game. Michigan made all of the winning and championship plays and played smarter and more aggressive football when they needed to. And if any of those things go differently, they probably lose that game. But Michigan, they pushed all of the right buttons. It was phenomenal.
Yeah, it was. And to speak a little bit about Sherrone Moore and give him a ton of credit, I think he did a fantastic job. Now, his job was just not to mess it up, but not only that, the little things he did, for example, to like icing the kicker, on fourth down, you think they're going to go for it. It was really just to try and draw Ohio State off sides. Like all the little details, Sherrone Moore did a phenomenal job. I know Jim was able to coach throughout the week, so that benefits Michigan, of course. But man, it makes the whole Ryan Day thing even worse. That like Sherrone Moore outcoached that man.
The double pass that he did, or I should just say the halfback pass that he pulled up?
Yep.
I didn't even mention that.
The trick play from
you don't
Donovan
see Ryan
Edwards.
Day doing that.
Like, it's just a little, I think Sherrone Moore, we'll see what Michigan does post Jim Harbaugh, but he'll be a head coach somewhere, if not at Michigan. So I think you nailed it, Sam Flat. Let's go to break. We come back. We'll get into more the big picture here. Will Michigan win a national championship? What's the expectations? J.J. McCarthy, is he a first-round pick? All that and more. Maybe a little bit of Ryan Day slander. We'll see where that goes.
Always
but before we do that...